I've got,
Yes or no, that's all you
no,
need.
I've ordered,
There's no one
3
here.
books, and I've got
Well, there's
2.
no fear.
I'm still waiting for the one that's going to be
It's a
super
sunny
hard.
day.
It's really short, I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it. So that's good.
Well, and I have-
Yeah, give him a couple minutes.
I have a couple things I was going to bring, but we haven't.
I found a great
Probably ought to
one
wait
about
till about
coyotes.
10:35.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Usual chance. Movie in as
You
usual.
can't kill me with strychnine. Just this defiance of coyotes. Good morning,
Good afternoon.
Good morning.
So I haven't started anything yet, Chuck, but I. Good morning, you too.
Good morning.
How are you? I'm okay.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
What a kid.
I know, right? I hope you can make it through.
Yeah.
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 We'll try.
Could have been really a surprise. We got to watch.
Good
Good
morning. Good morning.
Well, everything that might be.
How are you?
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole idea.
That's
That's
right.
all that is. So that's the idea for us
Good
too.
morning.
Good.
Good morning. Glad you made it.
You find your checkbook?
Not yet. Oh, there would be.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm getting along.
Yeah.
How that's gonna go, but. Oh, no, I didn't.
Hello. They're pretty easy to read.
Yeah, I would've got one.
So many blossoming trees, sense of joy, our own flowering gardens.
You're lovely, Judy.
And it's
Oh, well,
it's
yeah,
right
you know,
there
I've been
right
having-
close to the garage.
At the one thing we did on the bridge that we were there for 3 hours and there were all these. I stayed for 2 hours straight and I've been having work done on parts of me that are sore. It would be hard.
Do you want me to
I
write
even
it?
went back for a little, but I'm gonna have to go back again.
They're all out of the White House.
Next time, I'll take a chair or stay home.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've learned not to panic. It's just like, oh, here's one more little thing. They go back. And Molly's supposed to be here, but she's not here. What a turn. Doug, I don't think we have a greeter. Do you want to stay up? Molly's not here. Who isn't here? Molly, she's not here.
Oh, you tried that.
Maybe there will be more to listen.
Do you want to be the greeter? I can be the greeter.
Go ahead.
Well,
I can do it.
it's good for you to do it. It's good for you to get out in the world and be charming.
Ah.
No, we're waiting till like 10:45. We'll get in a few minutes. Yep.
How are you today, Miss Margaret? Miss, do you want, are you now? Okay.
You could just point people to the next page.
What a great way to start things out. See if I can find it. So
What to do is speak into it, I guess. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to this virtual and
in-person service of the Idaho Falls Unitarian Universalist Church on this 4th day of May 2025. Welcome to this place of peace. May we find some moments of quiet contemplation. Welcome to this place of celebration. May our hearts soar with gratitude for the gift of life. Welcome to this place of sacred love. May we gently hold all that is broken here. Welcome to this place of inquiry. Here, may we be challenged to open our minds and hearts ever wider. Come into this place of community. May we, together, draw the circle of love and justice ever wider. Welcome to this sacred place. Come, let us worship, celebrate, grieve, and love together. If you are watching online, please sign into the chat box so that we may know who is attending, and it will enable you to send in your joys and concerns. I'm Ron Goen. I will be assisting the Reverend Kevin Carson in the service. Marty Carson will be giving the time for all ages. Jessica at the piano, and Vic at our technical person back there. As far as announcements, the only one I think of is next Sunday is Second Sunday, so be sure and bring potluck, whatever. Next week is going to be a forum, and Victoria is going to lead it. Okay, wonderful. And it is Mother's Day. We better not forget that. Are there any other announcements? Hearing none. Please write your joys and concerns on a slip of paper. I already have a couple here, and we will read those a little bit later. And if there are no other announcements, it's now time for the community greeting. So, And now let us prepare ourselves for worship. Calm our hearts, our minds, our breathing. Breathe in deeply, in and out, listening to your breath as I ring the peace bowl 3 times. Our church's covenant helps us remember why we are a part of this faith and why we give our time and our resources to this congregation. If you so choose, please recite along with me the covenant that this congregation has chosen to live by. Love is the spirit of this community, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. We will now light the chalice. The chalice lighting is accompanied by the words from Christine Robinson. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
Good morning. Our call to worship this morning comes from Edward Abbey. How strange and wonderful is our home, our earth, with its swirling, vaporous atmosphere, its flowing and frozen climbing creatures, the croaking things with wings that hang on rocks and soar through fog, the furry grass, the scaly seas, how utterly rich and wild. Yet some among us have the nerve, the insolence, the brass, the gall to whine about the limitations of our earthbound fate and yearn for some more perfect world beyond the sky. We are none of us good enough for the world we have. I invite you now to join in singing our opening hymn, number 44, we sing of golden mornings.
We sing of golden mornings, we sing of sparkling seas, of prairies, valleys, mountains, and stately forest trees. We sing of flashing sunshine and life-bestowing rain, of birds among the branches and springtime come again. We sing the heart courageous, the youthful eager mind. We sing of hopes undaunted, of friendly ways and kind. We sing of roses waiting beneath the deep piled snows. We sing of earth's great splendor, whose beauty round us glows.
All right, good morning. Today, I'm going to tell you all how diseases came to the human race and how medicine came to the human race. It is an old tale from the Cherokee, and as you can guess, there will be critters involved. In the old days, the beasts, birds, fishes, insects, and plants could all talk, and they and the people lived together in peace and friendship. But as time went on, the people increased so rapidly that their settlements spread over the whole earth, and the poor animals found themselves beginning to be cramped for room. Now this was bad enough, but to make it worse, man invented bows, knives, blowguns, spears, and hooks, and began to slaughter the larger animals, birds and fishes, for their flesh or their skins, while the smaller creatures, such as the frogs and worms, were crushed and trodden upon without a thought, out of pure carelessness or contempt. So, the animals resolved to consult upon measures for their common safety. The bears were the first to meet in the council in their townhouse under Coahee Mountain, the mulberry place, and the old white bear chief presided. After each in turn had complained of the way in which man killed their friends, ate their flesh, and used their skins for his own purposes, it was decided to begin a war at once against him. Someone asked what weapons man used to destroy them. Bows and arrows, of course, cried all the bears in a bear chorus. And what are they made of? Was the next question. The bow of wood and the string of our entrails, replied one of the bears. It was then proposed that they make a bow and some arrows and see if they could not use these same weapons against man himself. So one bear got a nice piece of locust wood, and another bear sacrificed himself for the good of the rest in order to furnish the bowstring. But when everything was ready, the first bear stepped up to make the trial, and it was found that in letting the arrow fly after drawing back the bow, his long claws caught in the string and spoiled the shot. This was annoying, but someone suggested they might trim his claws, which was accordingly done. And on a second trial, it was found that the arrow went straight to the mark. But here the chief, the old white bear, objected, saying it was necessary that they should have long claws to be able to climb trees. One of us has already died to furnish the bowstring, And if we now cut off our claws, we must all starve together. It is better to trust the teeth and claws that nature gave us, for it is plain that man's weapons were not intended for us. No one could think of a better plan. So the old chief dismissed the council, and the bears dispersed into the woods and thickets without having devised a way to prevent the increase of human beings. If the result of the council had been otherwise, we should now be at war with all the bears. The deer next held a council under their chief, the little deer, and after some talk decided to send rheumatism to every hunter who should kill one of them unless he took care to ask their pardon for the offense. They sent notice of their decision to the nearest settlement of people and told them at the same time what to do when necessity forced them to kill one of the deer tribe. So now, whenever a hunter shoots a deer, the little deer, who is swift as the wind and cannot be wounded, runs quickly up to the spot and asks the spirit of the deer if it has heard the prayer of the hunter for pardon. If the reply is yes, all is well, and the little deer goes on his way. But if the reply is no, he follows the trail of the hunter until he arrives at his cabin in the settlement, and when the little deer enters invisibly, he strikes the hunter with rheumatism. No hunter who has regard for his health ever fails to ask the pardon of the deer for killing it. Next came the fishes and the reptiles, who had their own complaints against man. And finally, the birds, the insects, and smaller animals came together for the same purpose. The grubworm was the chief of their council. Each complained about the poor way they had been treated. The ground squirrel alone ventured to say a good word for man, who seldom hurt him because he was so small. But this made the others so angry that they fell upon the ground squirrel and tore at him with their claws, and the stripes are there to this day. The animals began to devise and name so many new diseases until, fortunately, they ran out of ideas, or else no human being would have been able to survive. When the plants, who were friendly to man, heard what had been done by the animals, they determined to defeat the animals' evil designs. Each tree, shrub, and herb, down even to the grasses and the mosses, agreed to furnish a cure for some one of the diseases named. And each said, "I shall appear to help man when he calls upon me in his need." Thus came medicine, and the plants, and every one of which has its use, if we only knew it, to furnish the remedy to counteract the evil wrought by the vengeful animals. Even weeds were made for some good purpose, which we must find out for ourselves. When the doctor does not know what medicine to use for a sick man, the spirit of the plant will tell him. We will now proceed to sharing the joys and concerns and sorrows of this congregation.
We have several joys and concerns and sorrows this morning, and Reverend Kevin will light a candle for each one. One from Mike, a joy. Yesterday was the first day of the Idaho Falls Farmers Market. The local LGBTQ plus community showed up by the dozens in pride gear to remind everyone that we're here, we exist in Idaho, and we're not going anywhere. Great. From Vic, a joy. Happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. And from Marty, a sorrow. For the victims of the horrific accident near Island Park, families, responders, and bystanders who became rescuers, may they find comfort. From Victoria, a joy. So many blooming trees. Our own flowering crab is gorgeous. Please admire it. I'll have to go and check that. And another from Victoria, a joy. The executive orders that roll out of the White House are being blocked by the judiciary. Hurrah! Are there any joys and concerns in the chat box? We will light one additional candle for those joys and concerns that we hold in our hearts.
Our reading this morning is from an essay titled On Going Gently into the Anthropocene by Michael Northcott in the book Religion in the Anthropocene, edited by Celia Dean Drummond, Sigurd Berman, and Marcus Vogt. The term Anthropocene for a successor geological epoch to the Holocene was coined by a Russian scientist in the 1960s and first popularized by Paul Crutzen at a meeting of the International Geosphere Biosphere Program, or IGBP, near Mexico City in 2000. In a plenary discussion, Crutzen said, "Whenever you go somewhere in the world and make measurements, you cannot avoid having to deal with humankind. And this is what is meant by the Anthropocene." Crutzen, with Eugene Sturmer, wrote up the idea in a newsletter of the IGBP, and the term rapidly snowballed from there, initially with the natural sciences and subsequently in the social sciences and humanities. As of 2017, when the article was written, over 1,100 scholarly articles, 50 books, and numerous media reports have been written on the Anthropocene, and the Subcommission on Quaternary Stratigraphy of the International Union of Geological Sciences is considering the case for recommending that geologists formally recognize the Anthropocene as the successor era to the Holocene. Crutzen initially identified the commencement of the Anthropocene epoch with growing atmospheric emissions from coal burning triggered by James Watt's invention of the condensing steam engine, the emissions of which are discernible in raised levels of carbon in air bubbles trapped in the polar ice pack generated from the 18th century. Watt's engine was so efficient compared to its predecessor that it enabled the large-scale extraction of coal, whose burning in sky-darkening quantities sparked the Industrial Revolution and anthropogenic climate change. The subsequent temperature rises mean that humanity will remain a major environmental force for many millennia. In a subsequent paper, Crutzen and Will Steffen argued that the Anthropocene commenced with a period of intensified human domination of the Earth system after 1950. From 1950, a range of indices of human influence on the planet show exponential increases, including nuclear isotopes in air, soil, and water from atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons, atmospheric carbon and methane from fossil fuel extraction and burning, boreal and tropical deforestation, industrial ocean fishing, nitrogen fixing in agriculture, intensive animal husbandry, and production of concrete, steel, copper, and aluminum. The period of the Anthropocene since 1950 stands out as the one in which human activities rapidly changed from merely influencing the global environment in some ways to dominating it in many ways. An offering to support the mission of this church will now be given and gratefully received. In a few days, the cardinals of the Roman Catholic Church will enter conclave to elect a new pope to lead the more than 1 billion Catholics who share this world with us. It will be interesting to see if the new pontiff they choose will display the kind of interest and commitment to environmental stewardship and justice demonstrated by the late Pope Francis, or whether we will see a retreat into the traditional indifference to the larger earth community that has so often informed the policies and doctrines of the church for centuries. Christianity has at most a mixed record on environmental issues, and you can easily make the argument that the human-centric and otherworldly focus of Christianity, combined with the global expansion of Western culture, has been one of the primary causes for the current ecological crisis. Indeed, Lynn White Jr. argued just that in his famous 1966 essay titled "The Historical Roots of Our Ecological Crisis," which has influenced the opinions of many environmental activists against religion for over half a century. But in fairness, there are genuine threads of green spirituality to be found within the Christian tradition, and a similar mixed legacy on ecological spirituality exists in many other religious traditions as well. Human evolution has come a long way and developed a rich diversity of religious ideas, and it is generally true that the further world cultures moved away from a sense of embeddedness within the Earth's web of life, either through technology or simply through changing worldviews, the more ecological destruction has been left in their wake. And religion has always played a role. Over the last few centuries, thanks to exploration, colonialism, and the incredible spread of technology, it is no longer a case of independent cultures dominating the ecology of a local region. Human impact is now a global phenomenon. As our reading described, humankind continues to leave an undeniable mark on every corner of the planet, in the soil, in the water, in the tissues of animals and plants, including in our own bodies. And we have altered the very chemistry of the Earth's atmosphere. We have entered a unique epoch in Earth's history dominated by a single species. And as we come to terms with the moral and ethical dimensions of this new Anthropocene epoch, our religious thinking will be forced to respond to this reality, whether we like it or not. So what are the possibilities of being religious in this new era over the decades and perhaps millennia ahead? Before I offer my speculations, I should acknowledge that according to the various proposed dates for the commencement of the Anthropocene epoch, we have already been living in the Anthropocene for at least 70 years, up to roughly 200 years. It is not something that just happened, and there is an obvious history of religion over this period. I also want to acknowledge the fact that the scientists concerned with stratigraphy have yet to affirm that we are officially living in the Anthropocene epoch, largely because of disagreements over when exactly it began. In fact, in March 2024, the International Union of Geological Sciences rejected the latest proposal. So officially, we are still living in the Holocene epoch, which began about 11,700 years ago in 9700 BCE, after the last glacial periods in the northern hemisphere, at the end of the Pleistocene epoch. The Holocene marks the period in human evolution that roughly coincides with the development of agriculture and the transition away from nomadic hunter-gatherer cultures, but this was certainly not the case throughout the world in a uniform fashion. Proponents for the Anthropocene have tried to identify a unique geological layer that everyone can accept, but this has proven to be problematic. One way you could imagine this is if 1 billion years from now, long after humans and Any clear evidence of our civilizations have disappeared? Could an alien geologist dig through the layers and find some indication that Earth once supported a technologically advanced species of life? The latest proposal for such a marker relies on sediment layers in an interesting lake named Crawford Lake in eastern Canada, about an hour's drive west of Toronto, which has a unique chemistry. Because of the top and bottom layers of this shallow lake do not mix through circulation, atmospheric deposits such as pollens sink to the lake bed and are sealed between layers of calcite into summer and winter layers each year. When scientists began taking core samples of the bottom sediment in the 1960s, they realized they had discovered perfectly preserved layers that could be accurately dated, stretching back to before the Middle Ages. It is one of only a few such lakes in the world. In these core samples, it is easy to identify the first signs of nuclear isotopes in the layers from the 1950s. So Crawford Lake was nominated as the so-called golden spike to mark the beginning of the Anthropocene. Alas, as I mentioned, the commission voted against the change for now. But the label Anthropocene has already become so popularized that it continues to gain unofficial traction nevertheless. I think it is reasonable to accept the label for this period in human history of domination of the planet, whether it ever gains official geological acceptance or not. And in the cosmic scale of time, whether we mark the commencement date in 1950 or 1850 really makes very little difference. There is no denying that we humans have left our mark on the planet and have really messed things up. So I think calling this the age of humans could be thought of more as a confession than as a boast. If we think that humanity has the capacity to change our orientation to the web of life in the coming years in ways that are more restorative and sustainable, we might consider a more hopeful label for this time of transition that was proposed by the theologian Thomas Berry in the 1980s. He proposed that we could be entering what he called the Ecozoic era, which in geological terms meant a transition from the Cenozoic era that began 65 million years ago when the dinosaurs went extinct. Eras represent a much bigger time frame in geological terms than epochs, and Thomas Berry was a thinker with very big ideas indeed. His proposed Ecozoic era was based on philosophical rather than geological assumptions, so I think it would be a much more difficult idea to gain general acceptance, but it points to the main point of my sermon today, namely, we are in a critical time in Earth's history when decisions we make will impact the entire Earth community like never before. And our religious ideas and moral values will shape these decisions for better or worse. What must happen is a reorientation, or what some have called a reconceptualization of religion and what it means to be human, that honestly accounts for climate change and other ecological challenges we face. It is the sentiment expressed by the paleoanthropologist Rick Potts, who wrote, "I've come to see the Anthropocene not as a debate about a new geological era, but rather as a way of thinking about our identity and what it will mean to be human in the future. Focus less on specific problems, less on piecemeal solutions to the harm people may induce, and more on the principles that may guide meaningful pathways as we consider to alter the world, as we continue to alter the world and ourselves." I think Potts is right. And despite the ecological damage that is ongoing, the reality of climate change and the frustrations many of us feel with the lack of concern and progress we witness all around us, I believe this new way of thinking is already happening on a large scale. and it has begun to change religion in many ways. Sure, there is plenty of fundamentalism and pushback from religious conservatives still around, and this will likely be the case for the foreseeable future simply because of the diversity of human beings. But attitudes about the earth and our place within nature are changing. Even at the start of the Industrial Revolution, you can see glimpses of this in Western thinking in the writings of transcendentalists like Thoreau and Emerson, and later writers like John Muir, who had advocated for a re-sacralization of nature. And after the environmental movement began in earnest in the 1960s, there was an explosion of books by serious theologians and philosophers advancing eco-spirituality from a variety of religious perspectives. In the last few decades, this has accelerated. I have read dozens of recent books on eco-spirituality by authors representing a spectrum of religious traditions, including Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, neo-paganism, and religious naturalism, in addition to secular philosophers, scientists, and historians who frequently point to the importance of spirituality in responding to the ecological crisis. Some have sought to highlight the eco-spiritual possibilities within their tradition as a way of deepening their faith in modern times, while others suggest a more radical transformation of religion is necessary for it to remain relevant and vital going forward. The late Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si is probably the best example of looking deep within tradition, and as I mentioned last week, it has been called the most important and influential religious book about the environmental crisis published so far this century. As for new eco-theologies for the Anthropocene, most authors agree that the decentering of the special status of human beings as something apart from nature is fundamental to whatever reconceptualization of religion we choose to embrace. This is especially hard for the three Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, because the idea of humankind being created in the image of God and given dominion over the earth's creatures is so central in traditional doctrines. Many other religions, including indigenous and many Eastern religions, do not have this problem, either because of a perspective that envisions humans as one part of a larger earth community, or because they are not theistic. This does not mean that one religion is objectively better or worse. It just means that each religion has its own issues to consider. Developing a new eco-theology for the Anthropocene within or outside of any religious tradition will involve drawing on a combination of theology, science, and environmental ethics and philosophy to be successful. The American philosopher Philip Clayton, who currently teaches at the Claremont School of Theology, has suggested three broad categories of orientation for new eco-theologies. The first approach is panentheism, which is the belief that the divine intersects every part of the universe and also extends beyond space and time. This is probably the easiest reorientation for Western religious thinking because it does not require setting aside a concept of God or other aspects of beliefs. What it does require is re-embedding humanity within a sacredness that permeates the cosmos. It sheds the delusion of the Cartesian worldview that sees human beings as entirely separate from an inanimate universe of things. The second approach he proposes is emergence, which relies on a philosophical framework that sees the divine reflected in different ways at different conceptual levels. For example, how is the sacred reflected at the level of cells, organisms, societies, language, and so forth? Philosophers and academics from several disciplines have been working in the field of emergence and systems theory for decades, And there are a number of interesting ideas, including religious thinking, that are worthy of consideration. Although emergence theology is not theistic in the traditional sense, it does open the door to concepts of God that might work for many people. Clayton's third approach, interdependence, is the most popular eco-theological approach because regardless of your religious beliefs, it begins with the recognition of our inherent reliance on Earth's millions of species in a web of interdependent relationships. It is also the easiest to prove through the scientific methods, and it can be as rational or as mystical as you are comfortable with. Our Unitarian Universalist faith has embraced our place within the interdependent web of all existence as a core value. Interdependence is also a common theme in the eco-spiritual writings of Christian authors, since it is easy to broaden the idea of stewardship of creation into an ecological understanding of the importance of the species with whom we share the planet. My suspicion is that any eco-theology that emerges and stands the test of time will demonstrate one or all of these approaches to some degree, although a completely novel approach might just surprise us. Religion can be revolutionary at times, although the origins of most religious ideas can usually be traced to earlier forms stretching back to prehistory. Interdependence, for example, can certainly be seen in the oral traditions of Native Americans and other indigenous peoples who saw humans as one among many creatures with whom we have a relationship. And though their cosmologies and origin stories were often very different, this sense of embeddedness within a web of relations seems to have been a common religious idea among tribal peoples since prehistoric times. It is no surprise that many eco-theologies suggest that a rediscovery of this perspective may be the best hope for humanity going forward. The challenge, of course, is that most of us in the modern world do not live as closely with the earth as our hunter-gatherer ancestors once did. I think it is still possible to rediscover a similar sense of relationship with the earth and our fellow creatures, though for me it is more rooted in our scientific understanding of ecology than in myths and legends like you heard in our Time for All Ages story. Mythical stories are still important and contain their own valuable truths, but it is also good that we have a scientific appreciation of the world that continues to provide sources of awe and wonder. I believe our spiritual journey can benefit from both. And that is probably why I am a Unitarian Universalist. As our species heads into an uncertain future in this Anthropocene epoch, climate change and other ecological issues will challenge us, and we face the real possibility of trying to live on an uninhabitable, or at least very difficult, planet if we fail to rise to the occasion and find a better way forward. I fear it will take catastrophic climate change to develop the political will to make the changes we need to make. But I still have hope that we will endure. With the diversity of ideas that have emerged in human history, I cannot imagine a single form of ecological religion that will become uniform throughout the world at any point. And I suspect some forms of fundamentalism will persist. But I do imagine that most religious varieties that evolve in the centuries to come will include at least an ecological component or nature-oriented foundational truth claim. The ecological crisis we are already facing will force this into our collective conscience, whether we like it or not. And being the clever species that we are, I think we will recognize a new sense of being an ecological self embedded within a complex web of relationships in an amazing universe. Darwin, geology, and cosmology have already forced us to reevaluate what it means to be human. And the more we learn about the universe, the more we must come to terms with the immensity of so-called deep time and deep space. I don't know if we can reorient our thinking in time to save us from the worst case scenarios of climate change. But let us take some comfort in knowing that humans have had a more interdependent relationship with nature in the past, and many people are working hard to nurture such a reorientation already. In the grand scheme, this sense of separation from nature is a relatively recent human phenomenon. It is frustrating that change can often take more than a lifetime to occur, and we only witness a short window of time. But here, too, nature can teach us to think differently, to think like a mountain, as Aldo Leopold said. So in this age of humans, let us learn to tread more lightly on the planet and transform our religion into something that reorients us to our place within the wondrous web of all existence in ways that enhance and preserve the diversity of life on earth. We owe it to each other and to the earth community. I invite you to rise in body or spirit once again and join in singing our closing hymn, number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth.
For the beauty of the earth, for the splendor of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of ear and eye, for the heart and mind's delight, for the mystic harmony, linking sense to sound and sight, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the wonder of each hour, of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of human care, sister, brother, parent, child, for the kinship we all share, for all gentle thoughts and mild, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
Our closing words come from Laudato Si on Care for Our Common Home by Pope Francis. More than in ideas or concepts as such, I'm interested in how spirituality can motivate us to a more compassionate concern for the protection of our world. A commitment this lofty cannot be sustained by doctrine alone, without a spirituality capable of inspiring us without an interior impulse which encourages, motivates, nourishes, and gives meaning to our individual and communal activity. The ecological crisis is also a summons to profound interior conversion. It must be said that some deeply religious people, with the excuse of realism and pragmatism, tend to ridicule expressions of concern for the environment. Others are passive. They choose not to change their habits and thus become inconsistent. So what they all need is an ecological conversion.
Please join me in reading the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.